I know nobody thought we would be doing our presentation over Google Meet, but here we are. So, this is the death of Anna Garcia.
Okay, so a crime scene investigator. A crime scene investigator is someone who would have, worked on the scene where Anna was found. They would have analyzed that bloody footprint. They would have analyzed her vomit. They would have analyzed what was in that red Solo cup. They would have analyzed the blood that was on her forehead and the desk, the fingerprint on the desk, and the hair found at the scene. They would also figure out, what she tried to inject herself with, because obviously there was something injectable at the scene. So crime scene investigator is someone who would have, identified and processed and collect all of those items found at the scene.
There were four techniques that help us. It was blood, and the blood was tested by people who are actually working on that, and it was positive to Anna's blood, and it was when she hit her head with the desk when she was dizzy and she fell. And then it was another evidence. It was hair, and we used her at the crime scene and compared it with Anna's hair to see if anyone else was in the crime scene that night that Anna's died. And in fact, that it was Anna's hair, so that made us believe that it was less likely to be a murder. And the fingerprints, there was a fingerprint on the side of the desk, and we tested to see if it was someone else's fingerprint or it was Anna's. And the fingerprint was Alex Garcia's, and he was actually there because they were discussing about paperwork that was for a beneficiary claim, and it was him. So, and the shoe prints, there was a shoe print on the floor at the crime scene, and we matched it to the shoe print of the sticker of Anna, so it was Anna's shoes.
So when Anna was found, she was found with blue lips and blue nails, which means that she would have had poor circulation when she had died. And that was probably due to the thick and syrupy blood and that she had. And she probably had the thick and syrupy blood because of her high blood sugar and her diabetes that she had.
All right, so a cardiologist is a doctor that studies and treats disorders of the heart, which we know Anna had multiple of. She had things like left ventricular hypertrophy. In her medical history document, it says she was referred to a cardiologist for self-resolving chest pain. So she definitely would have gone to a cardiologist to get her heart problems diagnosed, treated, the medications, you name it. And like I said before, she did have numerous heart problems, one of which being tachycardia, which means that her heart is beating way too fast. She also had arteriosclerosis, which means her arteries had a film of cholesterol, fat, or plaque over them, which means say a normal vein or arteries like that, hers would have been like that because it's all built up with plaque and cholesterol. She also had left ventricular hypertrophy, likely as a result of her high blood pressure. And then she also had a family history of heart disease. So that would be no surprise if that played a role in her death.
A medical examiner is a doctor who is responsible for examining bodies post-mortem to determine the cause of death, like Anna's. And toxicologist and crime scene investigator go hand in hand with medical examiner, and they examine the bodies, like I said, like Anna's. And the study too teaches organs, cells, body fluids, like for example Anna's vomit to determine her cause of death.
So a hematologist is a doctor. He would see if there was something wrong with your blood or your bone marrow or your lymphatic system. They would look at the tissues and your blood cells, and they would figure out if there was something wrong or if everything is going okay with your blood and tissues around it. So a hematologist would be the person that analyzes it and looks under a microscope and finds the sickle cells if you would have sickle cell anemia. And that would be the person that diagnosed Anna with her condition of sickle cell anemia.
Alright, Anna Garcia had high blood pressure. This means her blood was going through her veins and arteries like much faster than it should have been. It's like blowing through those veins and arteries. Her high blood pressure also put her at a higher risk for a stroke and heart disease, so obviously that could have contributed to her death.
Sickle cell, because of sickle cell shape, the red blood cell can cause blood clots, and there's enough healthy red blood cells to carry an adequate oxygen through the body and your brain. So this could have caused Anna to have low blood oxygen levels, and she also had a acute chest syndrome, which means she was not able to breathe properly, which can cause her death too. And her sickle cell anemia was one of the causes of her necrotic damage on her left kidney.
So in class we did a GTT and IT test, which it stands for glucose tolerance and insulin test, where we put we had a patient A, patient B, and we had Anna's different samples of their of pieces of their blood that would show their glucose levels and their insulin levels in their body. And then when we did Anna's, we found that as the time went by, her sugars kept going up, and as time went by, her insulin levels kept going down. And when we compared that to patient A and patient B, we found that Anna was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes instead of type 2, which means that she would have needed insulin therapy because it shows that her insulin levels were going farther down and her sugar levels were going farther up.
Alright, so a toxicologist runs tests on a person's body after death, so post-mortem, to see what kind of medications or toxins were in Anna's blood. When Anna had her tests run, she was found with acetylsalicylic acid in her blood, which is aspirin. Aspirin is also a blood thinner, so her blood should have been a little less thick, but we know by looking at her blood sugar levels that it was like thick and syrupy.
For the medications that Anna should have been taking, there were 4. Like Rachel said, she should have been taking a blood thinner, which would have been aspirin. But at her death, her blood glucose was a 280 milligrams per deciliter, which shows that she really hadn't been taking the medicine like she should have been. There were trace amounts of hydroxyurea, which is the medication for sickle cell anemia, but it shows that there were only trace amounts, so she hadn't been taking that as she should have been as well. There were also, she should have been taking an ACE inhibitor, which would have been for blood pressure, but it showed in her blood that she hadn't been taking it for about 3 to 4 days before she died. And lastly, she should have been taking a medication for her UTI, but it showed that she wasn't taking that either.
A urinary tract infection is something that you can get by, it's an infection that can happen anywhere along the urinary tract. And actually, Anna got infected with UTI pathogenic catheter with is contaminated with bacteria called S. marcisinus, and you can get it, and like she got tested positive for that infection.
So an endocrinologist is a doctor that treats and diagnoses and stuff with common diseases and disorders of the endocrine system, and diabetes just happens to be one of those. So Anna had type 1 diabetes, which means that she had to be really sick at one point to have her pancreas just stop producing insulin altogether. And we found that it was most likely caused by her having the swine flu when she was at a younger age. And then that's how she would have happened to get diabetes.
Diabetes. So Anna Garcia was diabetic, and she actually was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at a young age. And that is the lack of insulin has caused her blood sugar levels to skyrocket, leaving her blood thick and syrup along with the foods she eat before diet. Also added with making her blood like more syrupy. And her blood already struggled to break down sugars, but she decided to eat sugary ice cream the night before she died, and that couldn't have made her blood like easier to cut.
Alright, and to wrap it all up, we believe Anna Garcia died from an embolic stroke. An embolic stroke is when a blood clot forms somewhere else in the body, like your heart or your neck, and then travels up to your brain. We believe a combination of all our conditions, especially her heart conditions and diabetes and her blood conditions, all have led to this. So diabetes would have been probably a big factor because her blood would have been thick and syrupy and probably much more likely to clot. And then sickle cell anemia. Her cells were sickled like this, so they're more likely to clot because they're linked together like that, since they have sharper edges. And then she also had high blood pressure. Her veins already would have been severely damaged, and the high pressure would have put a strain on the blood cells and flattened them like pancakes. An embolic stroke also leads to walking and temporary paralysis. This likely could have been why she hit her head. She came in, she had her stroke, she was getting a little woozy, maybe a little paralyzed. She fell, she hit her head, and that's why the blood was on her forehead and the desk. She also had high hematocrit levels, likely meaning that she had heart disease, something that she already had a family history of. Heart disease also leads to atherosclerosis, which is the building up of plaque, narrowing the arteries and giving blood clots an easier time to form. Like, imagine a blood clot forming in a nice healthy vein like that versus one with plaque built up like that. So it probably would have been such an easier time for a clot to form and go right to her brain, and in turn give her a stroke. So we do believe that Anna Garcia had an embolic stroke.
Okay, so the next couple of pages are just our works cited. Everywhere we got information except for PLTW website, because that's where most of our information came from. And we cited all of our photos here as well.